Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Z, and welcome to another episode of Next Up Narcissism. Today, we have Wendy Behary. Wendy is absolutely brilliant at what she does. She is the founder and director of the Cognitive Therapy Center of New Jersey and the Schema Therapy Institutes of New Jersey, New York City, and DC. She is the author of an international best-selling book, Disarming the Narcissist, which was selected by Oprah Daily as one of the top books on the subject of narcissism. She has a specialty in treating narcissists and the people who live with and deal with them. She lectures both nationally and internationally on schema therapy, narcissism, interpersonal relationships, anger, and dealing with difficult people. It is an absolute honor to have Wendy with us today. We're going to dive into how to define empathy, but particularly how to define empathy within the context of narcissistic abuse. This is an extremely important episode, and Wendy does such a brilliant job of clearly articulating exactly what narcissistic abuse is and how we can maintain our boundaries in a way that's best for us. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Next Up Narcissism. Today we have Wendy Behary with us, who I think is an absolute genius, who I already told you that, and we'll get into, I'm going to get into schema therapy a little bit, which I'll explain to all of you what it is. But we are here today to talk about narcissism, narcissistic abuse, and how we can manage narcissistic abuse within our relationships, particularly during the holidays. Wendy is an expert, nationally, internationally known expert on the topic, and I am honored to have you here. So thank you so much for joining me on this crazy evening.
It's a crazy day, a crazy evening, and it's really, it's fun to be with you again, Jamie. It's such a delight and an honor for me too. I love your podcast program, and I was excited to have a chance to be in dialogue again.
Oh, well, thank you so much. So we're going to talk about something that that I had mentioned earlier to you, is something that we don't really, including myself, don't talk about enough. We're very quick to talk about how to disengage, how to set boundaries, which
Yes.
obviously is important, and how to even sometimes just completely cut off narcissists in our world. And to be quite honest with you, it's not always that, well, it isn't ever that simple, but when there's children involved, when there's relatives involved, it can get really difficult. So we're going to talk today about some alternative strategies on how to interact with narcissists in your life that don't seem so kind of dichotomous, and it has a little bit more wiggle room or gray room in it, while simultaneously not being manipulated. So Wendy, I'm gonna hand it over to you, and I just kind of want to talk about first why it is so important that we clearly define narcissistic abuse and narcissism. We know the topic gets thrown around so often, which is good and bad, but from your standpoint, from your expertise, why do you feel it's so important in terms of properly educating on narcissistic abuse?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it is one of the most important ones. And it's one of the questions that tends to sometimes be met with a lot of disdain, if you will, or resentment. Like, why do I have to waste my time putting on all of that tedious effort to understand narcissism? I need to take care of me. And the irony is, it is about taking care of you, because narcissism is all over the internet. And a lot of times it's not really narcissism, it's something else. Now if you talk about yourself for 3 minutes, you're a narcissist. So it really kind of gotten distorted, which is dangerous and problematic for those who are truly living with narcissistic abuse. Learn what you can. I really try to encourage people, learn all that you can about narcissism. Learn from the experts. What it is, what it isn't. Learn about the spectrum of narcissism. The more you understand it, the greater the chance for crafting your language, for crafting your whole posture, and how you're going to show up in relationship with yourself, how you're going to show up in your relationship with the narcissist. It's all about, really continuing to fortify that inner self-advocate. And we can only truly liberate ourselves from all the what ifs and the self-doubts and the maybe it was me and maybe I did cause that betrayal and I provoked the manipulation, you become emancipated when you really understand what you are up against when you're dealing with a narcissist.
Absolutely. Why do you think it is? And I'm curious as a psychologist, even,
Mm,
why do you think it is that people get so, I know it's because they feel that they've already put in so much work. There's been so much pain, so much just mental anguish, emotional energy, physical energy, all of it's
yeah.
just been spent that they don't feel that they should have to learn it anymore or learn about it anymore. And I get that part. But for people that don't necessarily have a narcissist in their life, I'm just curious from a social media standpoint, why do you think it is that people are getting so agitated and annoyed with learning about it or hearing about it?
I think partly because it probably rings a bell. I can't imagine anyone who hasn't met or hasn't dealt with someone who has at least narcissistic traits, if not a full-blown personality disorder. And it can reduce us to feeling a sense of smallness and defeat and upset and inhibition and insecurity. And and I think also it sometimes rings a bell for someone who's experiencing it within their own personality and makeup. Like, could that be me? I don't want to hear about that. I don't want to talk about that. Am I the narcissist? You may have been told by the narcissist that you're the narcissist. That's
Yes, which
also,
happens quite
oh
frequently, we
yeah,
know.
that's
Yeah,
a very common phenomenon. And so it is agitating and irritating to so many. I don't want to hear about it anymore. I don't want to see it
yeah,
anymore. I don't want to understand it. I don't want to waste my time on this. Just make it go away. And some of that is just our human survival system.
sure.
If it feels uncomfortable, I'm going the other way.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. I mean, that's the hallmark of avoidance. If we feel
Yeah,
uncomfortable, it's in our nature to not want to feel uncomfortable. I kind of blame
sure.
that on society because we've been taught from a very early age if something feels bad, get rid of it. Not if something feels
Exactly.
bad, sit with it and tolerate it so that you learn that you can handle it.
Exactly.
So
And we're
yeah,
primed for that. I mean, our whole survival
correct.
system is primed for that. So in some ways, when I say learn more, be curious, really try to understand. It sounds like I'm saying that counterintuitive thing, walk into the fire, go right
Yes.
into the fire, right?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. When you're teaching people how to manage these really difficult multi-layered dynamics, one of the things that we had talked about earlier was this idea of having empathy for somebody who is narcissistic in your life. And so when people are hearing that, I am sure they're going, why the hell should I have empathy for this person who has caused me so much pain, so much suffering? I have so many clients of mine, patients of mine, that friends that will say they've been with a narcissist for 5 years, 10 years, 15, 25 years. They feel like they've wasted, quote, wasted so much of their life. Why on earth would they have empathy? So can we talk a little bit about what empathy is in the context of a narcissistic abusive dynamic, what that looks like, and why it benefits the survivor?
Yeah, yeah. Boy, you just did
It's a
that
loaded
so
question.
well. No, it's such a great question, and you just described it exactly as most people would express their discontent when they see this. I mean, I write a lot about this, I speak a lot about this, but I find myself often having to do this, answer this question. I'm so happy you asked it because I think the problem is, we think of narcissists low empathy, right? Low, no empathy, not having that, seemingly not having that. I always say seemingly because I think they can learn if they really want to, that capacity to step into the inner world of another, to step into someone's skin, to really understand what it's like to walk around in that body and have those experiences. We are all capable of this because I always say, just think about your favorite movie, one of your favorite movies where the character's so well developed that you see this little child from the beginning of the movie who over time evolves and grows and develops to become a psychopath. And here you were just falling in love with this little child who has all this trauma and abuse, and you want to just reach into the film and rescue the child. And now you see this child, and it sort of makes sense. It's heartbreaking, but it makes sense. And you can't stand the psychopath who's doing all the terrible things, all this kind of outer coping or whatever we want to call it. But when things make sense, to us, it doesn't mean, oh, happy day. It can still be unsettling. It can still be upsetting. It can still fill us with grief and sadness. But it makes sense. And what that does immediately is helps to discern between what's my part, what's your part. And for so many living with narcissistic abuse, they carry too much of the part. And what they want to do is push it away. Empathy, the problem with empathy is the word empathy. Too many people hear empathy, they think sympathy. You hear empathy, you think compassion. It's neither. Empathy in really simple language is understand. So it's not having empathy for the narcissist, it's just having empathy about narcissism and your particular brand of narcissist that you may be dealing with.
That is such an important distinction that even just hearing you say it it's like you feel the difference, because that responsibility is just off of your shoulders, because there's a difference between understanding it and why they are the way they are, or not even why they are the way they are, but why they are doing what they're doing at the moment, or what the function of what they're doing is and why they're doing it at this particular time, versus this idea that with that understanding comes like almost a forgiveness in a sense for them. And I think sometimes that puts a very heavy weight and responsibility on the survivor or the person that's being abused, because and I say this all the time, I'm not, and I'm not sure where you stand with this, I'm not a firm believer in you have to forgive somebody in order to move forward, because I think sometimes that's a dangerous stance, because it puts your forward movement in the hands of somebody else.
I agree.
Right. Whether you choose to forgive them or not is up to you, but separate from them. But I think sometimes people lump that with empathy and confuse the two. So I love that you associate the word empathy with understanding, because
empathy is understanding. Empathy is here's what it is.
Empathy understanding the information, not even understanding the behavior.
Yeah, and understand, like, how did you become the way you are, and why do you do what you do? And because when you understand that, you are now better able to ward off the absorption of all of this distorting, coercive control, gaslighting. Call it what you want, but it's all about twisting and reshaping your reality. You're able to actually develop a bit of a protective barrier for yourself.
Objectivity.
Because you have a truth. Empathy is not agreement. Empathy is not endorsement. Empathy is not support. Empathy can lead to compassion for someone in your life, not necessarily the narcissist, but it can for therapists. It certainly can, when we have a better understanding of what's happening deep at the core for those narcissists that I've worked with who are actually willing to work on themselves. They want to work on themselves, or at least, they've sort of succumbed to the idea that they really need to work on themselves. So I think differentiating empathy, or just calling it a really deep, skin-felt understanding of how something works and why it is the way it is, becomes part of your freedom ticket. And it does inform the way you can best craft your language. Hold your head high, straighten your shoulders, lift your chin, make your eye contact, and speak not with a screaming, angry voice, but speak with a sturdy, confident voice about what's so. What is, what isn't. Set limits. Hold accountable, right? I understand that you're used to being in charge of everything in your life. I understand that you were taught that, just raise your voice and shout, or tell people what to do and just command control and you'll have what you want. I understand that's what you learned. I get it. It's not your fault, but it's your responsibility. And only you can change that if you want to. I'm not owning that.
I mean, that's a huge difference than people, and I hope the people listening can actually feel that it's almost like I said, like a heaviness is lifted, that you can say all those, be objective, be able to look at it rather than being all tangled up with it. Because when you have that objectivity, like you were saying, it gives you the freedom to then make different choices in terms of how you respond. I always like to say the power's in the pause, right? So you have that pause, you have that moment, You're able to look at it differently with the knowledge slash empathy that you have of the particular brand of narcissism that they're putting out there. And also understand where you fall in that, because everybody, as we know too, somebody who has true narcissistic personality disorder, everybody in their orbit, I like to call it, has a certain purpose and a certain function for them. And when you become more objective and understand what you're dealing with, then you also simultaneously understand, I would imagine, what purpose you serve in that orbit. And when you have an understanding of that, that gives you so much power in terms of how you choose to respond and which situations you tend to fall into and not. Because if you're able to say, oh, that's what they need me for, I know this one, this is where I'm up, it's my turn, I'm not going to get involved. And then all
Right.
the other stuff sounds like, in the Peanuts cartoons, the adult voices, the wah,
Yeah.
wah, wah. It doesn't make sense.
The
It
white
doesn't,
noise.
yeah, it just, that's what it becomes.
Yeah.
So what would you tell people when they're, especially with the holidays coming up and they know they're going to have to, let's say, go to a family's house, relative's house that they really don't want to deal with, or they really spend most of the year trying not to engage with. But what are some things that are, we'll say, kind of the tricky areas or the sticky areas that with this idea of empathy that they could kind of fall into? What are
Mm-hmm.
some things to look for?
Well, empathy has basically two dimensions, right? So you also want to kind of look inside. As you said, I love what you said, like the powers in the pause, because I think the pause is all about reflecting so that we're not reacting and recognizing what are those moments with the narcissist in your life where you feel the rise of intensity within you. So I'm going to say a lot of I words right now. Intensity, right, equals important. Important
Mm-hmm.
means investigate. Investigate means you have a chance to identify schemas and whatever's happening inside of you. And when you identify that, then you have the chance to run some interference on your impulse to react and actually to instead choose your responses from this sturdy place. So you have to also, empathy means to know, to understand, to get, to sense, right? Know yourself. Where am I the most at risk? When does that level of intensity strike me where I go into some defensive position when I have nothing to defend? When I
Because
start
that's where they're going to target
apologizing.
you. They're good. They know
Exactly.
you're vulnerable. They know your hot buttons, and they
Yes.
know, as you had
Right.
said, kind of where your beliefs about yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those wounds that you have, and those ideas that you fill yourself with
Yes.
to compensate for them. They know that, and that's
They know
exactly what they're
that.
going for.
They know that. And you want to, whenever you are about to engage with the narcissist at a family situation, the holidays coming, as you mentioned, take a few minutes before you step in that door, they step in your door, and just close your eyes and imagine, just tuck that little vulnerable you into a safe place. Create a little safe space in your imagination. It could be a real place. It could be something you're dreaming up, like floating on a cloud or sitting in a treehouse, wrapped cozy in a blanket. But take your most vulnerable, precious self and escort that little you to a safe place so that the person who is showing up will not be a robot and will certainly feel some of the like icky, sticky feelings, but will not become overwhelmed, will not drown in it, will not get lost in it, because it's our vulnerable self that gets most activated by the narcissist and just can't respond. Often gets really hung up. We need our sturdy self, again, not to be like a fierce warrior, but just to be sure-footed, confident, to be able to mix and mingle in the crowd, to limit your exposure to the narcissist, to know how to say, yeah, I think I'm done with this conversation right now. I'm going to
And
go
I'm
over there
even
and,
thinking like difficult, just not even narcissistic people, just
yeah,
difficult people.
difficult people.
I'm thinking about times where I've been at holiday dinners or events or whatever the case may be, and there's somebody there that I already know is going to be difficult or an issue, and I'm thinking of times where even I've been so over boundaried, right? Where I come off disconnected,
Mm-hmm.
cold, I kind of go to the one extreme. And again, this is even just with a toxic person, not
Yeah.
narcissistic
Yeah.
necessarily. And then I'm not able necessarily to get out of that so fast. When you said mingle with other people, it triggered this for me. I can't get out of it fast enough to be able
Right.
to associate with people who I don't view like that. And then you'll
Mm.
get, are you okay? Were you okay tonight? You didn't look happy tonight, or was something bothering you? And then you get mad at yourself, and then you realize how much power they still had over you, which was the
Mhm.
whole goal. And so what Wendy's saying for people listening is exactly to prevent that from happening, and that
Yeah.
sturdy place, so that it's almost a place of neutrality rather than
Mm.
anger or anything. It's a willingness to feel vulnerable, knowing you're in control. That's kind of
Yeah,
how I interpret what you're saying.
I have nothing to defend. It's sort of walking in with, I have nothing to defend. I have nothing to prove. I have nothing to apologize for. And if I do, I can own that too. If there's something I did that offended someone, but you're walking in with your healthy adult self, right? You're in a fortified position, because if you think about a little child, right? You've got kids, Jamie. Think about a child. Like, they don't have much choice when they are overwhelmed with fear and they're feeling helpless, as children feel, because they are, to a large degree, powerless. They have limited resources. What are they going to do? Well, they're going to shelter themselves. They're going to put themselves in a little fortress, like you were describing. You're in your fortress in that moment, and you're inaccessible, but you're also depriving yourself of the joy of being able to mix and mingle with people that you might otherwise enjoy. So, when we can take a few moments to really care for that part of ourselves, make yourself an audio flashcard. It's a wonderful tool. Take your phone, find your recording app, and talk to yourself, right? Listen to it as you're going out the door. Imagine your little self kind of safe and secure in a spot where, they're cozy and comfy, and you can go off to that challenging event, or that challenging family member, that challenging ex-partner, or whoever it might be, and still hold your head up high, right? Still be able to enjoy yourself and not be deprived of the opportunity to be with others.
Do you, I mean, I love that so much. And I know that people are going to find that so unbelievably helpful, because it ruins people's holidays.
Yeah.
Even when you have put up boundaries, even when you have really worked hard in therapy to, to do all of these things and have all these skill sets and
Yeah.
know how to respond, it still does drain you. And that
Yeah.
part is not fair to the survivors, because they've been drained
No.
for so long. And so, one of the things, though, that I do get back a lot from people is this: I don't want them to think that they've won, right? Or I don't want them to think that I've forgiven them or that I'm okay with it. And there's this sense of, well, if I'm nice to them or if I
Ah,
engage them,
ah.
then they think that I'm not angry at them, or they think that what they've done is okay. And I don't want them to think that. So what advice would you give
Oh,
people for
well,
that? Because I get that a lot.
I love that. This is a great question. Sometimes I call it the great phenomenon of
Hmm.
change and transition. And even, how do you recognize and maybe celebrate even a little bit of victory like that? Like, so let's say it's going nicely and it's going well. There's no conflict showing up, and now you're having that worry that you just described so perfectly, right? Oh, now he's going to think he's off the hook and everything's
Yes.
fine, and like we're
Yes.
back to square one, and I'm going to be the doormat
Yes.
again. And so now you feel yourself starting to stiffen, and you're getting angry and you're getting tense, and now your mood is changing. Well, before that happens, you can call up your narrator, right? Your own little, I call it the narrator voice. And that's the one that can say, I'm so aware right now of a part of me that just wants to say, isn't this nice that we can talk like this? Isn't this nice? And I'm also aware of a part of me that is just really concerned that it might seem like everything is just all okay. And we know it isn't.
Right.
Like, we know we're not there, but it
Right.
is nice that it can be nice right now. And so you give voice. I'm all about giving voice. I know some people are
Mm-hmm.
all about, like, just go silent.
Mm-hmm.
I am all about giving voice. I think that ability to be your best self advocate, to be assertive, to say what's so, does something for that internal, that little you. Like having that, ooh, oh, my protector just said the right thing, you know? And I was coaching somebody recently who did say this to her narcissistic ex, like, it was getting a little intense. And she said, you know, I'm so aware right now that I could get into this with you and we could start the dance all over again. And I'm not going to do that. And he said, oh, aren't you something? Did your therapist tell you to say that? And she said, I am something, aren't I?
Love it.
And she
I
walked
love
away.
it. I
She
love
walked
it.
away and went over to
Yep.
talk to somebody else.
Yep.
It's
I
like,
love
hey,
it.
bravo,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes. And I, you know, I love that example because one, it shows that steady self that you were talking about. It
Yeah.
shows that you are so aware that you're not just internalizing their voice anymore, which you used to do for so long because they controlled the narrative. And the fact that you now have two usually opposing narratives and that you're able to be present focused enough to be able to choose between the two and make an active choice shows the narcissist that they do not have control over your decision making. They don't have access to you like they used to anymore. And so even, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, and they won't like it. I mean,
No,
they
they'll
won't like it.
hate
So
it.
it's
Oh,
not
they'll
like people
hate
say to
it.
me, well, Wendy, this isn't like magic. It's not going to change things. So it's not going to change things immediately, but it's already changing something inside of you.
That's right.
So when you can say something like, I'm so aware that right now would be one of those times when I can feel the frustration brewing inside of me, but I'm not going there. I'm not spending my energy on this. I'm not doing it. I'm just not doing it.
And that's the freeing thing that you're
That's
talking
the freeing
about.
thing.
That's the freeing thing right there.
Yeah. Well, aren't you special?
Mm-hmm.
I am. Thank you. I really am special.
And it's like, what do they have to say? I mean, there's literally nothing that they can say. I mean, listen, will they probably try to do something to trigger you in a different way? Yeah, they may come over later and say, you know what? I am really proud of you for all the hard work you've been doing in therapy. You really needed that, right? And so, they very well may switch gears, put on, the facade of, I'm sorry when they're not, and to try to lure you back in. But again, it's all about gaining access to you. And so the fact that they know that you, I don't want to say are onto them because I don't mean it like that, but the fact that you have these two awarenesses, let's say, that you can actively make a choice, you now have control over your thought process. They can't do anything with that.
You weren't wrong to say that, though, that you're onto them, because there is something for the narcissist about maintaining their camouflage. And when you can see, you can see the hurts, and you even can speak to the hurts with empathy. Look, I know this is probably really hard for you, but it's not hard for me. Okay. Anyway, I think it might be. Oh, well, aren't you something? All the therapy you're doing now you're the expert. You say, I know a little bit.
Yes.
I know a little bit. So notice I'm not going to speak to the insult or the criticalness, because I know that's like, they're now toddlering, right? It's like the toddler. It's like, you're supposed to be my toy and you're not my toy anymore.
Yes.
And now the toddler's having a tantrum.
You're broken. Why aren't you working?
Yeah, it's not working. Right. Exactly.
Mommy, come fix this.
I know. But you're not just the toy, you're the mommy too.
That's
so
exactly right. But I love too in what you're telling people to say and respond is also your tone. Your tone is completely neutral. It's not angry, it's not bitter, but it's not sad, it's not happy, it's just matter of fact. And
and it's not easy, Jamie. It's not easy. I mean, people will say, come on, how do you do this when you're so revved up? And I say, practice, literally. Practice. It's as if you have been cast in the role to do this, and now you must practice your script. You practice with a friend. You practice with the mirror. You practice by recording yourself. You practice to get this voice, because this is your true representative of you. This is you. You might even get heard, believe it or not. And even if you don't, you're hearing yourself.
That's right.
And that's a win. It's always a win.
That's right. And it's your tone, it's your body language, it's your posture, it's your eye contact. And that's why I always tell tell people, sorry, to practice in front of the
Practice.
mirror,
Yeah.
because sometimes you could have the most neutral tone, but you have that scour, that your face, or you're angry, your hands are if you're okay, but your shoulders are up to your ears, and so
Yes.
it's a whole body experience, and
It really.
and if you think about it, they really have infiltrated every aspect of you. And
Mhm.
so it's important to pay attention to every aspect of you when you formulate a
Yes.
response to them. It's not
And,
just
and
what
and
you
never
say.
be afraid to put that pause in
Yeah.
place right in front of them,
Yeah.
as I will
Absolutely.
do even as a therapist in the treatment room, which is just to say, I need a moment.
Yeah.
I just need, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. I just need, well, what am I doing in this moment? Well,
Uh-huh.
I'm getting little me back. Oops, she's out of the safe place. Back to the safe place, take a breath, feel myself in my body. It's okay. I'm okay. Remember quickly the little story of the person standing in front of me. Once upon a time, there was a little boy who was told that,
Yes.
right? And so I'm remembering it all. All of that empathic wisdom comes back, and you can do that in 30 seconds. And then you can say, okay,
Yeah.
I'm back. I'm back. I was so aware that I was ready to just like give in to your demands as I would have done in the past, but I'm not doing that.
And you would actually say that
Say
out
that
loud.
out
Yep.
loud.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can we, I'm gonna dive into your other area of expertise to relate
Yeah.
it back to this,
Yeah.
because I'm fascinated by that. And so we won't get it. I'm gonna have you back on to talk specifically about what's called schema therapy, which I
I'd
was
love
trained
that.
in many years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, you are schema therapy. So I would love to have you give kind of a quick, very general overview of what a schema is and
Mm.
why it's so important when we're talking about our internal work that we do when we're engaging with narcissists, particularly as they trigger us, and when they trigger us.
Yeah. Let me try to give a really good brief
I
overview
know
of this
I
for
realize
you.
there's probably not the really
It's
brief
no,
overview, but
it's such a good question, Jamie. And schema therapy is my passion. I was part of the original team of people, along with Dr. Jeffrey Young, who is the founder of schema therapy. As you know, he is a genius. He's a
mm-hmm.
brilliant man with a brilliant mind who created this model back in the early 90s. And I
Mm-hmm.
was part of that team at the time in New York City. So I feel very
I'm a
privileged,
little
to have.
starstruck right now, everyone. Just so you
Well,
know.
I, I kind of grew up with him. I was young at the time, and schema therapy is really my love. I do believe it is one of the most beautiful, as you know, you learned this
Mhm.
model has one of the most beautiful conceptual frameworks of
Loved
most
it.
treatment models, and we integrate. It's
Yep.
science informed. There's a lot of research. It's all over the world. But in a nutshell, a schema is an emotional belief. We all have them, right? Even if you came from a not so bad childhood, you're going to have schemas because of your biological makeup, because of your peers, your school environment, a teacher, a coach, an older sibling, a younger sibling, an extended family member, if not your parents, right? And some people have lots of schemas. There are, the possibility of anywhere from, 1 to 18. But it is an emotional belief about ourselves, about the world, about how we predict the future based on certain unmet needs that were not adequately met in our childhood. And in some cases, based on traumas where it's much more extreme situations. So, for example, you can grow up with the idea that, narcissists grow up with the idea that they really are defective. Believe it or not, underneath all that bluster, there's usually a little child who feels very defective and learns how to overcompensate for that by being obnoxious. But many of us, you can grow up with the idea that people aren't going to be there for me. They're not going to meet my emotional needs. So I'll just have to give and give and give and subjugate my voice and keep myself quiet and keep the peace and take whatever little crumbs I can get. And that's how the world works for me. I guess I didn't have enough value. So I just named 4 schemas: emotional deprivation, a feeling of defectiveness and unlovability, a self sacrifice schema, which so many partners of narcissists have, and a subjugation schema, another popular one for people dealing with narcissists, where we go silent, where we refrain from sharing our preferences and opinions and ideas. And we kind of, we sort of, again, hold hostage our other emotions as well. So schemas are these emotional beliefs that will inform certain coping styles, or what we call modes, ways of coping with the world, that will inform a kind of internal critic that can be very self-blaming. And now you add that to a narcissist in your life, and you've got like the cacophony of this chorus of voices that are saying things about yourself that just become even deeper. You get deeper indemnified there. So it's very, I say it's a beautiful model. That didn't sound beautiful, except that it's
No, I get
understanding
it.
that there is a way out. There is a way to, as people will say, can you kill a schema, and can you resolve it? Can you heal it? And the answer is, you can't make it go away completely, because you have a memory. And as long as we have memory and stories and experiences, we can't make the schema completely go away, but we can soften it. We can silence it. We can make it dormant. We can make it less intense, less frequently triggered. And that's by getting those needs met. And there's a whole protocol for how we do that, with imagination and imagery and mode dialogues and chair work and beautiful experiential strategies that help us to look back at maybe the dad who told you you were a loser. And now, although it's always a sad story,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't carry forth a truth that I'm a loser. It's that
That's
I
the
had a
key.
parent who
Yep,
was not doing a good job parenting me.
that's right. And
Right?
it's one of the things I always tell people is you kind of chip away at it, at its heaviness, at its truthfulness, like you said, but it's almost as if it's an emotional it's like a reflex. You're never going to get rid of a reflex. It always may be your emotional reflex, but then again you pause and you realize exactly what you said so beautifully. I realized that it's not that I was a loser, it's that my parent was, not parenting well. And this was the narrative that was sold to me, but it's not a narrative I need to believe. It may always be my go to response, especially when I'm stressed and anxious or purposely triggered there, but I can regroup, redirect in that moment, take the 30 seconds and realize, nope, I can go this way. And I have this vivid memory in my head of this workbook of the page with all the ski. And I'm literally picturing that right now,
Yes.
having like a grad school flashback of all like the schema, just the list and the arrows and the flow chart. And when Wendy's saying it's a beautiful therapy approach, the reason why I think I resonate with that is because it did such an eloquent job of explaining like those deep truths. It had such
Yes.
like a poetic way of explaining
Yes.
something that was so difficult, and I really loved it. And I think it helps people, particularly those who are in abusive relationships, to be able to look at their vulnerabilities in a way that's just not so heavy and scary,
Yeah,
right? Like it's so
absolutely.
heavy. What we do is so heavy all the time that when you explain it in that kind of schema way or in that mode, it just doesn't sound so heavy and it takes the blame off of you.
Exactly. Again, we make sense of things. So it's
Yeah.
all about, again, we go back to empathy. It's this sort of empathic attunement. Like, things make sense now. That's why I get so upset
Yes.
when X happens. That's why I tend to go quiet when this happens. So we can see the activating conditions. And as I say to my clients, like, success is not about, nobody changes completely,
No.
but success is about less triggering, less intensity, faster recovery.
Mm-hmm.
So just as you were going through that, that interesting kind of movement transition of when you know that you're being triggered, that's what it looks like. It's like suddenly it's, oh, I didn't get triggered. I would typically get
Yes.
triggered. I didn't.
Yes.
Or, oh, I did, but I got on board really fast. My
Yes.
healthy adult brain got on board really fast and was able to re-register that, reorganize that.
That's how I
And
tell people therapy and medications
yeah,
are working. That it's not
yeah,
this sudden change where you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm different today. It's exactly what you said. One day something will happen that always triggered you, and you realize afterwards, wait a minute, the intensity was at least 25% less than it normally
yeah,
is, right?
yeah.
Or maybe totally gone for that situation. And so that's how you judge your progress. And so when you go into the holiday season, when
Mm,
you are engaging with people, don't look for this all or nothing. I'm either going to get triggered or I'm not.
right.
Go in, and also I tell people, don't go in expecting it not to happen. because
Right.
these people didn't change. Everything you think is going to happen is probably going to happen, but go in with a different response pattern to it, or at least a different understanding, which brings us back to
Absolutely.
have the empathy, have the understanding
And
of why it's
if I
going
can
on.
mention it, Jamie, there is a course that I developed with my colleagues in Australia. It's called the Schema Therapy Solution. It's for everyone. It's not just for, it's not, in fact, it was designed for everyday people. It's not a clinical course, although we have a lot of therapists that sign up for it too. And it's running now, and it's available, and your listeners can purchase it, have access to it for $39.60 because we're doing a special deal. So it's Connect 60, all caps, Connect 60, I think is the discount
I'll
code.
link everything in the show notes.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just, if you want to learn more about the model, it's a really wonderful course.
Yeah, I highly recommend that for people. Even if it's not even for therapy, it's just to understand your own stuff. Really, truly,
that's what it's for. It's for everyone.
Where you're amazing, you're brilliant. I am so honored to have you and to be able to talk to you. And I definitely want to have you back on and talk to you in depth about schema therapy.
Well, you're a pure delight yourself, and I love talking with you. I just admire your work so much, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
Where can people find you? Where can they find your books and your courses and all of that?
Everything's on my website. So www.disarmingthenarcissist.com. It's all there.
Amazing. And social media?
Yeah, I'm
Instagram.
on
you
Instagram.
Post amazing things.
Yeah, Facebook. I'm LinkedIn. I'm on different platforms as well.
Any last ideas or pointers or tips that you can give people as they go into the holidays? Anything that kind of words of wisdom?
Yeah, I'd say just, take good care of your vulnerable self, be kind to your vulnerable self. It's take those moments to pause, to reflect, to escort yourself into positions of safety. And don't forget to bring your happy child into these holiday events too, because there's a happy child in all of us that loves to come out and play. And there's moments of happy, silly, playful experiences with those safe, wonderful others in our lives, or maybe others we haven't even met yet, but we might meet in a holiday event, can also be, another way to make some fun memories and have some good experiences for ourselves. So we protect our vulnerability. We celebrate with our happy child. We use our healthy, sturdy adult to be able to kind of keep us on track and be our best internal and expressive self-advocate. Learn what you can. Learn all that you can about yourself, but also about what you're up against. Let it make sense and resonate inside of you so that you can have those moments of liberation. And you can have a lifetime of liberation when you really get it.
Yeah, yes. And you can feel it physically. You can feel it too. Yeah. I love that. And thank you again so much. And I think I know people are going to get so much from this. Again, you're amazing. And I'm just honored to have this conversation, and we will definitely do it again.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Have
a great holiday.
You too. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Next Up Narcissism. I hope you found it useful, but most importantly, I hope you found it validating. Want to work one-on-one with me? Visit my website at drjamiezuckerman.com to book a personalized coaching session, and be sure to check out my on-demand workshops on topics like co-parenting with a narcissist, life after leaving, anxiety management strategies, and more. Again, that's drjamiezuckerman.com. You'll also find links to my interactive workbooks, merchandise, resources, and newsletter sign up. Next Up Narcissism is as much your podcast as it is mine. I want to hear your feedback and what you want to hear. So make sure to leave a podcast review wherever you listen, or send an email to nextup@drjamiezuckerman.com. Again, that's nextup@drjamiezuckerman.com. Be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Make sure to tune in next week to see what's up next on Next Up Narcissism.